but history tells, not the Bible, but history actually tells that this guy, Bartimaeus, after receiving his sight, he became this amazing follower of Christ. So Mark thought to himself, hey man, I better put this boy's name on paper because man, this dude is something else. But you gotta understand that this whole story is wrapped around so many different perception and so many different views. And the first view I want you to understand about this is the contrast between hearing and seeing. All right, the contrast between what? The contrast between hearing and seeing. When we get into the beginning of the text, it says that they're going through Jericho. Why Jericho? Jericho was about 15 miles northeast of Jerusalem. And Jericho just so happened to be one of these great places where a lot of religious folk would go through to enter into Jerusalem. And here's this blind man, right? And you know, if you were a homeless dude, and a lot of the homeless dudes that are around here that got game, that know what they're doing, right? Because you got to understand, if you're homeless, you got to hustle. So here's this blind dude who got no money, probably got nowhere to stay. He knows where to go. He know all the hot spots, right? Oh, just the other day, me and Linda were driving around, and we would notice like a lot of homeless dudes near a lot of the mega churches out in San Bernardino, and they would post stuff like a block away in front right where people would exit, right, or get on the on-ramp. And the best place to ask for money and to beg, right, is near a church, because you figure here's all these religious folk just coming about, and hopefully they heard a sermon about giving to the poor, and here I am, holding my sign, will work for food or whatever the case may be. So if you think about it, here's Bartimaeus. He's sitting on the roadside, the Bible says, and he's begging. But he's not just begging to any folks. He's blind and he's begging, and he has this crowd of people moving through. And the religious folks, because it was during the Passover, so that means that there was more people in Jericho than there was normally. And Bartimaeus actually picked a good time and a good spot to start begging for some money. Right? So the best spots to go is like go down Sunset and maybe hang out near all the nice restaurants and all the nice places to buy clothes, and maybe if they have any change left, they'll slip you $1 or $100 or however you may be. But here's Bartimaeus, right? And he's blind. And it says that Bartimaeus, he's asking people for money. Can I get some money? I need help. And to be blind in the 10th century, you've got to understand that he needed people to help him to survive. Without the means of other people, Bartimaeus would be dead. So his whole life depended on him being able to ask other people for help and other people for money. And this time he's sitting during the day and he hears footsteps, but this time he normally hits a few footsteps, but for some reason it was a crowd of footsteps. It sounded like a mob of people coming, and Bartimaeus is probably, the dollar signs are probably going in his mind, and he's thinking to himself, whoa, I'm going to get paid. Because normally there's just a few footsteps that come by me every now and then, but it sounds like there's a large crowd coming in. And you can imagine, since he is blind and since people are blind, you got to understand that every other sense in their body is heightened, so he is solely dependent on what he hears as opposed to what he what. And we're talking about the difference between hearing and seeing, and the illustration of Bartimaeus hearing what is going on and being dependent on what he hears as opposed to what his seed plays a big part in this story. So he hears all these footsteps coming. He's like, oh, okay, somebody's coming. And then he's trying to listen. Who could it be? And let me tell you something. I bet you that there was all these other people shouting out Jesus' name. Because when you read the story, you got to understand that Jesus was at celebrity status. Jesus was at celebrity status to mean that every town he went through, the Bible continually says that there was 5,000 men, not including women and children, that would follow him. And in the beginning of this story, it says it was Jesus, his disciples, and a large crowd following him. And I bet you he was hearing other people shouting, "Hey, Jesus! Jesus!" And it was a familiar name. Now watch what happens. Bartimaeus actually has to go back maybe a week, a month, a year, of how many people have come through Jericho talking about this man named Jesus, who was able to give sight to the blind, who was able to perform all these miracles. And remember, this is crazy because we're talking about hearing and seeing. Bartimaeus is actually going back and saying, hey, Jesus, I heard about this guy. I heard about this guy named Jesus. He performs miracles. He helps sick people. I even heard that he raised a little girl from the dead. I don't know. Could it be this Jesus? Now remember, Bartimaeus is basing everything that he believes on something that he's heard, not what he's seen. You see, a lot of other people had the benefit of seeing Jesus perform all these miracles. Yet Bartimaeus had no idea, has never seen how Jesus looked, who he performed these miracles on. Everything that he's believing in is always based on what he hears, as opposed to what he sees. So he's sitting there and it's like, oh, there's Jesus. And the Bible tells us this. He says, he shouts out his name, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus of Nazareth, son of David, have mercy on me. Can I tell you something that our hearing often plays a part in what we believe? Can I tell you that's why God gave us the Bible with words so we can read it, hear it, and listen to it as opposed to a book of pictures? Amen. Can I also tell you that the hearing and how we absorb what it is that we believe, the context behind what we hear, actually has an influence on what we believe in and what we actually become. For those of you who are Polynesian descent, you know that oral tradition has been known throughout our community for years and hundreds of years. Before they even wrote a book, before we even knew how to write, it was through oral traditions. My grandmother, 90, going to be 91 years old next month, has all my uncles go to her every time there's a big meeting where all the Samoan chiefs get together. And the big thing about knowing your lineage is that the more you know people's last name and who they're tied to and who their village is from and what family they're from, and you're able to go down, right, the better you are at speaking at these functions. So a lot of my uncles, right, for a long time I'm thinking, man, my uncle's good, man. He up there saying, you begot someone, begot this one, blah, blah, all the way down to the 1700s. You're from this village, and before that village was even there was another village. And then this guy took over the village, and this is your uncle's cousin's, aunt's, brother, sister's, nephew. And I'm thinking to myself, man, these guys are good, but in actuality, all of my uncles, all the Matais and the chiefs of my family actually go to my grandmother. And they sit in front of her, and they give her a last name. One last name. And my grandma, without pulling out any books, because there's books now where you can find someone's last name, you know, they cheat now. But my grandma, 90 years old, you give her one last name, she'll give you the history and the people and the lineage of that person as far as she can remember. And the reason why is this is because what we hear is actually a form of what we become. And Bartimaeus is solely dependent on what he hears as opposed to what he sees. And he hasn't even seen Jesus yet. He just heard of this guy named Jesus. And because he heard who Jesus was, he says this. He doesn't call Jesus just by any other name. Hey, dude, what's up? It's that dude Jesus? No. He gives him, it's Isaiah wrapped around this whole story. Because he says this, Son of David, have mercy on me. He is actually claiming before the disciples even knew that they were walking with the coming Messiah, and says, hey, that's Jesus from Nazareth. He's the Son of David. I've never seen him before. I've never seen any miracles, but I believe. Why? Because of what I've heard. Can I tell you, a lot of things that you listen to actually becomes of who you are. That's why when people gossip about other people, it's really bad for your health. Can I say that? The reason why is this is because even when you see somebody and you see something happen, right? Say I saw Jennifer doing something last week. Then the following week, some girl said, hey, some girl named so-and-so came up and says, hey, you heard what Jennifer was doing last week? And even though I saw and I knew what the information was incorrect, oftentimes I start to question myself, is that what she was doing? And you got to be careful on who you listen to and who you surround yourself with, because a lot of times gossip is actually bad for your health. Because the person that's actually gossiping about the other person to you is probably doing the same to them about. Can I tell you this? When you surround yourself with people that give you advice and gossip about things that are out of the Lord, it's kind of hard for the Lord to transform you. Again, we're listening to what we hear as opposed to what we see. So he's sitting there and he shouts out, right? Because he hears, here comes Jesus of Nazareth. He shouts out, Son of David, have mercy on me. And it says, people try to rebuke him. Have you ever seen somebody famous in public and the first person that sees them, they're like, hey, it's Shaq. Everybody stops and they tracking what they doing, where's Shaq at? The other day we were on a boat, we were headed to Catalina with Linda the kids, and I mean, there was a gang of people on this boat, right? Linda's over here with the baby just chilling, and everyone's having a peaceful time trying to get used to the seasickness, and out of nowhere, man, Linda just shouts, "Oh wow!" Let me tell you, about 100 people stopped what they were doing and ran outside to go see this whale. And I said, dang, did you have to tell the whole Pacific Ocean that there was a whale? She goes, was I that loud? I said, you was loud, girl. Even the people on the top deck were looking over like. And this is Bartimaeus. He's shouting, hey, Jesus of Nazareth, Son of David, have mercy on me. There's a perception between what we hear as opposed to what we see. The other thing that I want you to focus on is not only the things that we hear and what we see, because in the next part of the story, it actually gives us some resistance against Bartimaeus claiming the Son of David. And there's two different things. It's persistence versus resistance. Turn to your neighbor. Persistence versus resistance. So he here he is, right? He's like, Son of David, have mercy on me. Right? He's all excited, right? And all of a sudden, it says people try to rebuke him and keep him quiet. He's so excited, it's like a buzzkill. Right? It's like Richard was saying, when everybody else was happy to see him, hey, daddy's home, and Daisy's like, man, done what? It's like buzzkill, right? It's like you just stopped in your tracks. This is what happened to Bartimaeus. It's like, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And then the crowd rebukes him. And then the Bible also says not only they rebuke him, they tell him to be quiet. And the Bible suggests that it wasn't just any folk telling him to be quiet. It was actually the disciples and church folk telling him, shh, quiet. Shut up your mouth.